In this lecture, I will try to answer this question. What happens after completing a PhD? A PhD degree can be the doorway into research, but one can also choose to capitalize on the gained experience in other directions, like teaching or consulting. Others may choose to start an entrepreneurial adventure or move to industry to lead the development of new products. If one decides to continue to do research, one can do that in industry, in public or private research centers, or in academia. Hereafter, I will mainly discuss what happens in this last case, although what I will say in many cases also applies to the other cases. In addition, over time, a researcher may move from one position to another. Nothing is carved in stone. A fresh PhD looking for an academic job is likely to first be offered a temporary postdoc position. A postdoc position may be a good opportunity to enrich one's experience in a different context and strengthen the CV. Often, it gives an opportunity to start supervising students, do independent teaching, and also some independent research. It helps extending the collaboration network. At some stage, a PhD who wants to do research in academia will apply for a position in a university department to achieve the status of an independent researcher. Success of the application depends on the applicant's qualification, and in particular, for a young researcher, on the quality of publications. It also depends on the research plan presented by the applicant. Finally, because teaching is as fundamental as research in academia, an applicant should also provide some evidence of his or her teaching skills in terms of past experience and a teaching plan for the future. When first hired in academia, in most cases one is on a temporary position and is only moved to a permanent position after a probation period and an explicit evaluation. This, however, varies a lot according to countries. Variations also exist in terms of levels through which one can progress in his or her career and the mechanisms used for promotion. It is impossible to describe here all the different regimes or even enumerate them. In most cases, however, promotions are not automatic, but based on an explicit evaluation. Evaluation, both after a probation period and before promotions, is based on merit. Whenever a researcher is subject to an evaluation, he or she should understand exactly what one is evaluated for and what one is expected to show. Preparation for evaluation is crucial. One should create his or her own portfolio, research, teaching, service, including a set of external reviewers who might support the case. We will discuss evaluation in depth in other lectures. Let us focus here on the skills an independent researcher should master and improve over time. To be an independent researcher, one should be able to autonomously decide which research directions should be explored and how. This, in turn, almost inevitably implies that one should have the necessary resources to support research. Resources may be needed for experimental equipment, computing facilities, new devices, and so on. They are needed to support travel. They may be needed to support the researcher's salary. In some cases, the salary does not cover 100% of the researcher's time. They may be needed to support PhD students. Resources are rarely automatically available to researchers. Rather, they need to be acquired through application in competitive funding programs, often supported by public money, but also by other sources. The ability to compete successfully in funding acquisition is key for researchers. Success is one of the important aspects taken into account when a researcher is evaluated. When applying for funding, one should carefully craft an application that matches the purpose of the funding. Different funding schemes are often available, with different scope and different success criteria. Be sure you understand them very well before writing your proposal. Another important skill one should master is supervising students. Very often, as I mentioned earlier, the availability of research funds is a precondition for hiring students, typically PhD students. Supervising students is extremely important for a researcher. It is the primary process that produces the future generation of researchers, and it is a way to amplify the supervisor's research breadth and depth. Researchers should carefully self-assess their approach to selecting and supervising students and try to improve it over time based on their own experience, including the experience they had as PhD students and the best practices of their peers. Teaching is a fundamental skill that can also improve over time. This course only touches teaching tangentially as part of a researcher's life progress. Thus, I will only provide a short comment. Teaching requires continuous dedication and time. Teaching material needs to go through continuous revisions and changes, especially in rapidly evolving fields. Teaching methods also change. The trend towards more active learning and use of technology, for example, availability of online courses, are moving teaching from the traditional ex cathedra style to hands-on participative style. Academics need to take the lead of these changes. Another important skill is service. Researchers are expected to invest time and effort into service activities. Services can be internal, in the department or college, or external. Internal service may concern participating in committees, for example, for student admission, or, in the case of senior researchers, even take leadership roles, for example, department chair. External roles may concern reviewing papers for conferences or journals, participate in editorial boards or conference committees, research funding committees, and so on. Remember that research organization is largely self-managed by researchers who dedicate part of their time and effort to sustain communal activities. The level and kind of involvement in service activities varies quite a lot according to seniority. Senior researchers are expected to spend more time and take more responsibilities than young researchers. Certain activities like reviewing are typically shared with young researchers and may be career launchers for more visible roles and additional responsibilities. A last skill I wish to comment on is networking, which is partly related to service. I mentioned networking as one of the skills a PhD student should develop. Networking should be further strengthened as a researcher progresses. Networking allows a researcher to participate in collaborative research that involves multiple participant sites, which increasingly happens today. It enables the researchers group, in particular PhD students, to be exposed to external collaborations and scientific exchanges. In conclusion, researchers do other things than just research. This is true in academia, but it is also true in other contexts. Time and activity management is crucial, and more so as a researcher progresses in career.